It appears that we have a quorum. In fact, it appears that everybody's here. So I'd like to call the Board of Selectmen meeting to order at 6:31. This meeting is being recorded and minutes are being kept by Gail Hunter. And the recording will be posted online later this week. Okay, in terms of announcements from the chair, we had a very lively town meeting on Saturday, which kept everyone's attention for almost 3 hours, 2.5 hours, and dealt with many different aspects of business for the town. We thank the people who attended, and if you have questions about what actions were taken, please feel free to contact me or any other of the selectmen who were there. Okay, we have a very full agenda tonight, so I want to jump right in. We're going to start with the tax classification hearing, and this will be our new assessor, Michelle. Michelle, am I going to butcher your name? I am going to butcher it. Branciaforte. Branciaforte.
Thank you.
Okay. So go ahead, Michelle. You can take us through this.
Good evening. My name is Michelle Branciaforte. I'm the new principal assessor for the town of Manchester by the Sea. I started in this role on October 25th, 2021. Tonight, we also have with us the chairman of the Board of Assessors, Mr. Lewis Loeb, and board members, Mr. Robert Beatty and Mr. Jeffrey McAvoy. The purpose of the classification hearing is for the Board of Selectmen to determine the allocation of the local property tax to be borne by the 4 classes of real property and Class 5 personal property for fiscal year 2022. In deciding the allocation, the selectmen must adopt a residential factor. The residential factor is used to determine the percentage of the tax levy that is applied to each class of real and personal property. The Board of Assessors applies these percentages to the individual property classes according to Mass General Laws, Chapter 40, Section 56. It is the responsibility of the assessors to provide the selectmen with relevant information and to discuss the fiscal effects of possible alternatives. You will need to take 4 votes tonight per the presentation we supplied you with. I will go through each scenario and you will see the request for votes at the bottom of the particular page. So page 1 of the presentation is a summary of the changes from fiscal year 21 to fiscal year 22. And starting with a total taxable value, the fiscal 22 total taxable value is $2,835,464,676, which is up $144,718,710. The tax rate, although not approved by the Department of Revenue, is projected to come in at $10.60 per thousand, which is a reduction of 39 cents per thousand from fiscal year 21. The average single family value is for fiscal year 22, $1,334,021. That value in fiscal 21 was $1,264,400. The median single family value is an array that we do, which lists all single families in town from highest to lowest value, and we find the middle point. The middle point, which is the median single family value for this year, is $867,400. Which is up from $826,200 from fiscal 21. The average residential value, which is single families, apartments, condos, multifamilies, developable, undevelopable land, that value for fiscal 22 is $1,239,944, as opposed to fiscal 21 when that value was $1,156,000. The average commercial industrial value is $851,808 for fiscal 22, which is up $30,000 from fiscal year 21. Average taxable value, which means none of the exempt properties are included in these figures. For fiscal 22, that value is $1,178,008, up from fiscal 21 at $1,115,100. The overall value, the average overall value for the town is $1,089,657. This value includes exempt properties, and this value is up from $1,044,400 in fiscal 21. Median overall value for fiscal 22 is $730,800, up from $705,900 in fiscal 21. If you look at some examples of tax changes, the average residential value times fiscal 21 tax rate, that tax bill was $12,704.44. But this year, with a new assessed value and the new tax rate, that tax amount is $13,143.41. For median single family, last year, the average bill was $9,079.94. This year, that value is, that tax dollar amount is $9,194.44. There's an increase from fiscal 20 to fiscal 21. There was a $48.55 increase based on average residential assessment. For fiscal 22, the increase is $438.97 based on the average residential assessment. Our new growth was for fiscal 21, $180,020 with $15.386 million in value. For fiscal 22, the new growth was slightly higher at $204,109 and $18.572 million in value. This was an interim year for the town. We made adjustments based on 2020 calendar year 2020 sales for single family homes and residential condos. We made adjustments from sales of July 2019 through June of 2021 for all other classes of property. The total increase in taxable value is 5.38%, and the tax rate decrease is around 3.7%. As you can see from above, the increase in taxes based on the average residential assessment, the tax amount is going up $438.97. The total assessment of the town, including exempt property, is $3,049,948,676, which is $155,894,010 higher than last year. The tax rate is not official until approved by the Department of Revenue. If you turn to the next page of the report, you will see the overall levy for the town. The tax levy is $30,055,925.57. And out of this overall tax levy, 93.45% lies within the residential class. And commercial, industrial, and personal property amount to just under 6% for the balance of 100%. The pie charts underneath show you that most of the town is assessed at residential properties, with a small portion of commercial, industrial, and personal property. And the tax levy confirms the same. If you turn to the next page of our presentation, you will see the emerging of the shift analysis. We're starting out with a tax rate of $10.60, where the residential factor is at 100%, which means the residential tax rate and commercial, industrial, and personal property rates are the same, $10.60 per thousand. As we start to shift the residential rate at 10%, 20%, 40%, 50% onto the commercial tax rate, there's a small decrease, a small reduction, saving 7 cents, 15 cents, 30 cents, 37 cents to the residential tax rate. However, the impact on the commercial, industrial, and personal property rate is $1.06, $2.12, $4.24, and at the maximum of 150%, $5.30 per thousand. And you can see at the bottom of this presentation, this gives basically the differences per class. At the bottom, you see the bar graphs where as the residential rate decreases, the commercial, industrial, and personal property rates increase. They take on that added burden. Where you can really see what happens if we were to shift the rate is if you go to the next page of the presentation. And for example, a shift at 10% from residential to commercial rate, the saving to the average single family would be $86.80 for the year. But when you go under the commercial industrial average value and you look at the 110% shift, that increase onto the average commercial property is $902.92. So the average single family would save $86.80. The average commercial property would have to take on an additional $902.92. And as we go through these different shifts, the maximum saving to the average family, a single family, would be $458.78. And the maximum increase to the average commercial property would be $4,514.58. A shift to commercial, industrial, and personal property also affects businesses and second homes with an increase in their personal property tax. Based on the analysis, the Board of Assessors recommends a single tax rate for all classes of property. And this will require a vote. If you would like to take a vote now or at the end of the presentation, you will need to take 4 votes tonight. That's up to you, however you would like to do it.
I think we'd like to do a vote at the end of each portion of the presentation.
Okay. Do you have any
Are there any questions from the Board of Selectmen regarding this presentation and the shift analysis? I mean, clearly, it's at the maximum shift. It's 10 times increase for 10 times over residential decrease. That's shifted over to each individual commercial property. So
You'll find it's 10 times.
So can I get a motion, please, for now?
Move to adopt a single tax rate for all classes of property.
Second.
Okay.
classes of property? The next page of the presentation.
Hold on. We have to vote.
Sorry.
Let me do a roll call vote, please.
Okay.
Becky? Ms. Jakes?
Yes.
Mr. Round?
Yes.
Mr. Bowling?
Mr. Bowling is muted.
Yes.
Ms. Harrison?
Yes.
Mr. Bowden Turner votes yes. Christina, you have your hand up. I'm really not wanting to take much public comment in this because this presentation is detailed and you have a very quick question.
That's exactly my question. This is very detailed and it's not a presentation. We can't see anything and we haven't had any knowledge of this. We can't see it. There's no reports posted online. So.
Okay, so this is pretty standard in terms of the way that the Board of Selectmen has dealt with this in the past. And there's nothing that's going to go up online. So we're going to continue through the motions that we need to make to certify the tax rate. Okay. Michelle, you want to do the second part of this?
Yes, the next item is a residential exemption. The maximum amount of exemption is up to 35%. Properties that are owner occupied would qualify for the exemption. We have 1,600 estimated parcels that would qualify. Apartment buildings, only the unit the owner occupies would qualify for the exemption. However, the decrease in value for residential class 1 due to the exemption causes the tax rate to increase, which in turn affects the other classes of property. It would have the same effect as shifting the tax burden onto the commercial, industrial, and personal property, except it would affect everyone except for the owner occupied properties. We do not have open space, but if we did, this would also be affected. Therefore, a residential exemption is not recommended by the Board of Assessors.
Okay.
This will require a vote as well.
Is there any discussion by the Board of Selectmen about a residential exemption? Can I get a motion, please, to regarding residential exemptions?
I move
Motion to
that we,
support no residential exemption for fiscal year 2022.
second.
Second.
Okay, that's moved by Mr. Bowling and seconded by Ms. Harrison. Roll call vote. Mr. Round,
Yes.
Ms. Jakes,
Yes.
Ms. Harrison,
Yes.
Mr. Bowling,
Yes.
Mr. Bowden Turner votes yes. So do you need a vote, Michelle, on open space discount since we don't
We
have?
do,
open
we
space?
need a vote on open space as well.
Even though we don't have any.
We do not have any, so we need a vote not to adopt this open space discount.
Okay.
This would grant an exemption percentage voted on by the Board of Selectmen, not to exceed 25%, thus shifting that tax burden onto the rest of the residential properties in town. Adopting an open space discount lowers the open space tax rate because the amount of the levy paid by the class is reduced. Those taxes are shifted to the residential class 1, which means the residential tax rate would increase. And again, a vote would be needed not to adopt an open space discount.
Okay. Get a motion not to adopt an open space discount.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
One at a time. Becky moved.
John
John
seconded.
Round seconded.
All right.
Okay, roll call vote. Ms. Harrison,
Yes.
Ms. Jakes,
Yes.
Mr. Bowling, you're going to need to unmute. Mr. Round,
Yes.
And yes.
and Mr. Bowling threw in his yes very quickly, and my vote is yes. So that's a unanimous vote. And we have one more vote.
And one more vote. This is a small commercial exemption, which would be up to 10% exemption of small commercial properties in town. The benefit would be to 25 properties in town. There are 147 properties that would not benefit from this exemption. This would also cause the commercial tax rate to increase, and therefore we do not recommend that a small commercial exemption be adopted in the town of Manchester by the Sea. And a vote is required for that as well.
Okay. Can I get a motion to not have a small commercial exemption?
So moved. Second.
Second.
Moved by Ms. Jakes, seconded by Mr. Bowling. Roll call vote. Mr. Round,
Yes.
Mr. Bowling,
Yes.
Ms. Harrison,
Yes.
Ms. Jakes,
Yes.
Mr. Palmer Turner votes yes. Okay. Michelle,
All set.
thank you very much.
Thank you.
That's a lot
Thank
of
you,
work
Michelle.
for a short presentation. And an outcome that has been consistent for year over year, given the imbalance of our revenues coming from so much from residential properties.
Right.
So thank you very much, Michelle.
Thank you for your time.
And
Thank you, Michelle.
And you got your first one out of the box.
I did, yes.
Right.
Mhm.
Okay,
Thank
thank you. The second item on our agenda tonight is the issues of traffic calming. And this includes a reading of a second reading of the traffic calming policy. I'm not going to literally ask that it be reread. It's been posted and available for people to look at. It's also been reviewed previously by the Board of Selectmen, and I would ask if the Board of Selectmen, any member of the Board of Selectmen has a comment or question about the traffic calming policy.
If I may, Jeff.
Go ahead, Becky.
While it's not a question or comment regarding the policy itself, I still think that this is not sufficient to address some other concerns by people.
Okay.
But I think it's a great start, but I just want to put that in there.
Okay, I
Thank you.
will entertain some discussion about those other concerns because we have in our agenda traffic calming policy and procedures. So we could discuss those other concerns following specific concerns related to the policy. So are there any other comments from the Board of Selectmen regarding this?
Jeff, if I may.
Yes, Becky.
I just wanted to say it's a very well thought out policy Chuck did, and I'm sure it took quite a bit of time. So I did want to thank him for that.
Okay. You can smile now, Chuck. No, he's shaking his head. No, I'm not going to do that. Okay. I have a question. And that's on page 1, the initial minimum criteria. And we may have raised this question previously. Forgive me if we have. But item number 4, the posted speed limit is not greater than 30 miles an hour. That has a lot of limitations in terms of, particularly in the village core area, where there are so many safety zones at 20 miles an hour or 25 miles an hour. Actually, the standard speed within town is 25 miles an hour, and we've created safety zones under very specific criteria to drop that to 20. Is there a reason why the standard speed and that safety zone speed was eliminated from consideration in terms of this policy?
I actually read it as the opposite. So that means all of those zones, anything 30 or lower as a posted is a minimum criteria that, so therefore if it's over 35 or 35 or over, we would not consider it.
Okay. All right.
And there's no particular magic to 30. But I would say that when you get larger than 35, there's typically, a traffic engineering reason for that. So I don't, like you said, I don't think we have a lot of them that would be under consideration. But for instance, there's probably, in other cities or towns, stretches of 1A perhaps that are town maintained that are posted at 35 that really I don't think you could implement this type of policy on a street like that just without some additional out of town thinking, meaning DOT.
Yes.
Like, so that's the intention. I suppose we could have some caveat that number 5 could be special exception for X, Y, and Z and define X, Y, and Z, but I hadn't given it a lot of thought beyond
No, I think
30 miles per hour.
I think you clarified my question. So that's fine. Are there any other questions from the board?
Yeah, Jeff, I have a question. I'm not sure whether it's for you or in general, or perhaps for Chief Fitzgerald, but it's on step 2 under data collection. And I was just wondering, I mean, we're collecting a lot, and I've seen some of the reports that have been posted online with regard to some of the studies. Do you also collect information with regard to the time of day for the various speeds that are recognized? And I'm particularly wondering about the higher speeds. Is this like at 6 o'clock in the morning, or is it 3 in the afternoon? I'm just curious if you break down data further along those lines. I see Chief Fitzgerald there, but
I'm not sure.
Yeah, sorry, I lost you there for a minute.
okay.
Our data collection does break it down even further if that's something we want to do. But
Okay.
it just takes it normally over a 7-day period for the number of vehicles, type of vehicles, et cetera. But we can break it down for time of day.
Okay. Just curious about that. That could be an important piece of information in some of the data that you collect.
It's an interesting point, Mr. Round. Because if there's particular times of day that people tend to increase their speed, that would really inform what the best timing for enforcement would be.
Well, that's my thinking. And especially if the high speeds are like 6 in the morning for people trying to get to work. I mean, there are high risk and medium risk times of day for sure. But just in general.
Okay.
I think that probably is covered more or less in the paragraph, descriptive paragraph under step 2.
Okay. Any other questions from the board?
Um,
Go ahead, Aidan.
I would make one comment. I know that some people have read this and it said it is a long set of steps that we look to go through here. This is born a little bit of experience, out of a little bit of experience. We have done some rounds where we tried to jump in and take steps to put in place what we thought were reasonable measures or measures requested by residents for some particular localities. And when we did that in the past, what seemed reasonable turned out to be considered unreasonable by people who hadn't heard about it or saw the changes or saw the experiments that we were doing and came out of the gates pretty strong and with negative feedback for us. And we ended up thrashing back and forth as a result. So this policy, I think, is intended to make the process a little bit more deliberative from the beginning, or deliberate from the beginning, so that we don't thrash back and forth and get residents upset over one measure versus another. I think that's the whole point of this.
Jeff, if I may.
Thank you, Rita. Ms. Harrison.
I plan to save this for the discussion of what else we should do, but the impression I get is that this policy works on for the large majority of people who are using a road. And I think there's concern in populated neighborhoods about a few people who are way speeding, not just the average over 7 days. And I don't know how we could address that, and perhaps it would be better to just add that to the discussion that Becky wants to have. But if there is a street where 1% of the traffic is going twice the speed limit, you know, that's dangerous and upsetting, and I don't think that gets handled in this policy.
Okay, I think that the point that you're making is an important one. I'd like to just go back for a moment to what Eli was just saying, that this policy does capture areas where there's a consistent issue around speeding and traffic problems, accidents, etc. But what you're describing is something that most likely is not captured by this policy. So Chuck or Chief Fitzgerald, would you like to comment on that?
I mean, I can just, from a engineering perspective and, town street perspective, you don't design streets or implement laws to capture 1% of the traveling population. I'm not saying that's right or wrong. I'm just saying that was never the intent, of a street layout or or this particular policy for sure. So I'd have to take a little more thought, I guess, to come up with a better answer of if that could be implemented here. But I guess my question would be, if we implement changes to, basically target the 1%, I wonder if that would move the needle for the maybe 1% that's in favor of some traffic calming measures, in areas that, we have some of these problems that we're trying to address, to say we don't want that. Because I can certainly put speed bumps down every road to target the 1% that would, disrupt them very heavily from using a particular road. But then everybody is going to have to live with that 365 days out of the year. And I think that I would be very concerned that would cause a negative reaction like Eli had mentioned, and also one that we would likely be undoing very sure. And that's not to say we can't do it. And I actually guess I would say that could potentially be implemented in this policy if, you can get 75% or whatever, I forget the number that we ended on, but that, whatever this process says, if people are adamant that they want speed bumps and they want, 10 of them on a given stretch or, multiple roads within a given area, I can do it. That's not physically impossible by any means. But I would say we'd probably be going to, the later half of this policy and seeing, within 3 years' time, if those actually stay implemented or not.
I'm sorry, I really didn't
Interesting.
mean to slow down the adoption of this policy. I think this policy is fine. I'd just like to see if we can think in the future about ways to capture the occasional problem without putting in speed bumps that stop everybody and cause
I've
auto repair places to become fabulously rich.
Yeah. So yeah, that's it. Yeah. I hear you. I think that perhaps this policy could get to that point at, if it was really the will of everybody in the neighborhood, then I think that potentially could happen with this policy. I have jokingly seen in other areas, if you really want to dig into some traffic calming measures, there are what they call speed activated speed bumps, where if your approaching speed is, whatever you set it at, say you're in a 20 mile per hour zone and you're going 35, it will actually depress. So it's like a reverse speed bump. It like implements an on-demand pothole. And so that would certainly, be something we could look at. I haven't priced them out yet because I didn't know that it was a serious thing, but they do make such things for sure.
I think the maintenance of that technology would be very expensive.
Yeah, I don't know that they've tested it in 20-degree nor'easters, but we could look.
Yeah.
We should do it just for the Facebook feedback.
Any other comments or questions about the policy as written? Okay, any public comment on this policy? Since this is.
Oh, can I just interrupt you 1 second? I'm sorry. Christine Matrano Barber. I just had a question. It seems like, I don't know, that we're kind of talking around the subject of the streets that we have done the petition for and the emails for and all that. Ms. Harrison said the 1% that does speed over the speed limit, but it's far more than that. And those of us that live in this village neighborhood can sit in our living rooms and watch people fly by all the time. There was a 20 mile an hour sign put up with the blinking digital thing. Well, that's not on anymore. So I just think, I want to know, one question is why are we not writing speeding tickets? Why
Okay,
this?
Christine,
Yep.
there's two separate issues here.
Okay.
One is a policy that leads to structural interventions in the way that traffic flows.
Okay.
Things like speed bumps, stop signs, flashing lights, things like that. And that's what this policy is about. There's a second issue which you're raising, which is enforcement of people who are going over the speed limit. And that's not something to be captured directly in a policy. That's a very important issue. I don't disagree with you whatsoever. But it's two lanes, if you will, that we're moving in. And you're already in the second lane, and I know you want to get to the second lane. But first, I would like to deal with this policy as an issue, because if we don't vote on it, this policy doesn't exist.
Sure, I understand that.
Except there's a lot of work that Chuck Dam and Chief Fitzgerald did.
Right. No, I appreciate that. I understand.
Okay.
Thank
So
you.
thank you for your comment, and there will be an opportunity for other comments in that regard in just a moment.
Okay, thank you.
Terry, could you identify yourself, please, and your street location?
Yeah, Terry Cowan, Surf Village. I'm also on the Bike and Pedestrian Committee. One issue that came up when we reviewed the policy was the 75% threshold.
Yes.
From the community, and we're at a loss to figure out how that would be applied in reality. I mean, what are we actually counting in that 75% threshold to get to kind of the first step?
Chuck?
Sorry, I think we changed that in this second revision to be greater than 50%.
For which?
If that's for the step one. Yeah, greater than 50% in step one. So again, just to clarify what step we're talking about. So on step one, the idea is that somebody reports the problem, and then DPW and PD will kind of review the concern, verify that it meets the criteria of 1 through 4 that make it a minimum criteria. And then we, the DPW and PD, would basically, decide, what problem we're trying to address. I think even in, the reference made to the neighborhood one, it would be hard for me to, really determine where we're going. So I guess I would probably ask the petitioner or somebody else that reported the problem, what exactly. I would probably ask a few questions to probe at where they're going with that. And then the idea would be that, we would come to some sort of agreement of what the affected area is. And, typically I think we would be trying to deal with abutters. So we would want greater than 50% of the abutters to agree that that is a real problem that needs addressing, not, people from, that were just walking into Crosby's and had somebody ask them for a signature. And so the PD and DPW would determine that, and we would either put them out to the people that were in that neighborhood or in that zone of influence, I'll call it. And then we would, see that we got 50%. I think we did have some discussion at the last reading as well, that would be, basically one abutting property would constitute a signature. So there wouldn't be, if you're a household of 10 or, something else, that wouldn't be 10 votes, because obviously that would be very hard to, keep track of and identify. So that was the intention. And then I think that's just for the phase one improvements, which we all, defined as something that was, I'll say, less physical in nature. So signage, public education and more enforcement. But then, to get to step two, which is more of a physical change, that's where you would probably get to some sort of speed bump or other physical change. We would, to implement that change, for years to come, we would want to see 75% of the people say that they were on board with that. So that was the intent. I think that's where we ended up. Happy to revise it. Those numbers are just something that I thought was reasonable. And, there was a comment on the phase one being, because I think they were both 75% at first.
Yeah.
So we reduced that to 50% for the current version.
For what little it's worth, the draft that I have in my packet says 75
For
at
both.
in the first for both. Yeah.
Mine too.
So it's the one I sent a revised one to Greg with, I highlighted the exact things that changed, but it would have been, the name of it was, traffic calming Rev 1, which is the only revision we've had. I can forward that along.
Were there other substantive changes, Chuck? Because this is an issue in terms of the board's receipt of this particular document, which is the same document we looked at previously.
Sorry, there were only a couple minor changes. I would have considered that one a minor change as well, but I did get some comments from some of you. One was to make sure that stop signs were included in stage one, because that's something we've applied in other areas. We also added safety zones to the other considerations. That was something that was brought up in the original. So those are the three main ones that I see. So yeah, those were the only three. That's all. The stop signs, safety zones, and greater than 50%.
None of those are in the version we have, Jeff, right?
Sorry.
Right. Chuck, there's nothing in terms of stage one mitigation measures in this. It's all the procedure.
Well, there was so in step 4, stage 1 traffic calming, it notes that these methods may include the monitoring, trailer feedback signs, etc., public and traffic enforcement, and then signage. And then in the version that I just sent you guys, it specifically says, signage could include stop signs, and pavement markings was also part of that revision. So guess I don't know what to say except that happy to change whatever you guys think is necessary, but that's where I thought we were.
Okay. So that's stage 1 at 50%, and then stage 2 is 75%, and that's where you get into physical structures in the road.
Yep.
All right. Terry, you had another question?
No, I'm good, thanks.
Okay,
We would support the policy, by the way.
thank you.
Mhm.
Any other comments or questions from the public? Okay, with the revision of 50% for stage 1 and the clarification under stage 1 traffic calming at the bottom of the second page of this, that signage would include stop signs. Is the board ready to vote to adopt this policy? This is our second reading.
I think you left out safety zones under other considerations. And what is the point score for safety zones?
So the implication being, if there's a traffic calming measure, preference would be given, or more points would be given to one that is already in a safety zone. So that the idea would be that we must have a speeding or traffic calming need in a safety zone. So therefore it should be implemented quicker.
So that would be 5 points or 10 points or?
I just put it in as 5 to match the no sidewalks.
Okay.
And it
Fine.
was a little bit less than school zone, but yeah.
Chuck, can you clarify what a pedestrian generator is?
So those are typically, in the case of Manchester, would be something like the beach or the railroad, stop where people are, obviously leaving on foot or, could potentially be leaving on foot. I guess the parks would certainly be a, whether it's Masco or Reed Park, could be considered a pedestrian generator.
Okay.
People are likely walking there. Or,
So I'd like to request a change in the language of that because we're all clear on this sitting here now when we're about to adopt this policy. But in the years to come, when a board of selectmen or a select board in the future reviews all the policies that we're currently reviewing back to 1979, pedestrian generator does not ring my bell. So areas of high pedestrian traffic, such as or areas of intermittent high pedestrian traffic, such as parks, beaches, etc.
Sure.
Okay, that gives more clarity to it than pedestrian generator. I thought that was a machine on the side of the road that created people.
Jeff, if I may,
Yes, Becky.
I have a question for Chuck. Also under other considerations where it says school zone, I thought those were safety zones.
They're not one and the same by the definition of safety zone. So I think safety zone could include school zone, but not the other way around.
Okay,
So it was just having both in there specifically.
thank you.
Safety zones also include senior facilities and medical facilities, but we don't have any that are specific to that here. We do for the senior facilities. That's why it's 20 miles an hour on Pine Street. And yeah.
And safety zone is not a generic term. It's a zone that's basically been approved by the Board of Selectmen as a safety zone.
Yes.
That's what we've done in previous boards. So I don't know that that needs the same definition.
Right. I agree.
But pedestrian generator could.
Okay. Any other comments, thoughts, questions, edits? So would the board like to vote based on the suggested edits tonight, or would you like to see the final copy of this on December 6th? Can we just do a vote?
Jeff, the final copy is Chuck sent it, so it's right. It's in our emails right now.
Yeah, I didn't get a chance to just now define pedestrian generator, but that seems to be the only outstanding comment.
I'm happy approving this as is, or
Okay.
with the changes we've discussed.
Me
Thank
too.
you.
Okay, so can I get a motion, please?
Motion to accept the traffic calming revised traffic calming policy.
Rev 2.
Rev 2, thank you.
Second,
So moved by Ms. Jakes, seconded by Ms. Harrison. Any further discussion? Roll call vote. Ms. Harrison,
yes,
Ms. Jakes,
Yes,
Mr. Bowling,
Yes.
Mr. Round,
Yes.
Mr. Bodmer Turner votes yes. Okay. We're slipping the schedule pretty quickly here, but the second issue that has to do with traffic has been raised by both Ms. Jakes and Ms. Harrison and by members of the public. And that has to do with speeding in areas where traffic calming measures have been either approved or have been ineffective. And I'm opening up the discussion of the issues related to the petition that was brought up by the residents of Norwood Street, as well as other incidents and concerns that have been raised to various selectmen that I'm privy to from having them talk to me about. So anybody has a comment that they want to start this section off? I'm going to limit the discussion to about, I don't know, 15 minutes. Mr.
Anne said it, I think, perfectly. And some of the questions which were raised in or comments in some of the correspondence point to maybe not the bulk of the speeders, but they're definitely, I think, a significant number of people who are greatly exceeding the speed limit. And the streets where this seems to be occurring with most frequency are, Pleasant Street. I don't see School Street, so I can't speak to that. Pine, Pleasant. Yeah, you're there. And even Mill Street. So we do have a problem with some people who are greatly exceeding the speed limits. And I'm curious why, and this is really to Chief Fitzgerald, why we don't write more tickets. And I think he deserves the opportunity to say in a public forum, why, because we all think we know the reasons why, but we don't until we're told.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
So yeah, I just want to reiterate and go back to some of the discussions I've had with some people. When we receive the traffic complaints, we address them as best we can. We got to remember, and if I had the staff and the personnel to dedicate to someone to traffic full time, then I would definitely love to do that. But again, the data that we receive in our accidents just does not indicate some of the concerns that the people have. We currently have 2 patrols on the street at one given time. We've assigned a traffic sergeant to oversee most of our traffic complaints. We maintain a daily log of those traffic complaints as part of our roll call, and for areas for the patrols to do traffic enforcement on a daily basis. Patrols, most of the time, as time permits and as staff allows it, do at least a minimum of 2 hours of traffic enforcement per an 8-hour shift, and that's 24 hours a day. And that doesn't take into account the morning and afternoon school traffic enforcement on Lincoln and Arbella and Pleasant Street extension. We've done other things we've applied for a road safety grant through the Executive Office of Public Safety. We just got this second one a couple of weeks ago, and we began crosswalk enforcement last week, which resulted in a 1 day of 2 officers just assigned to do traffic enforcement. Then the next component to that is impaired driving over the holidays, speeding in the spring, and hands-free, cell phone enforcement coming up next summer. So to say that we don't write tickets, I kind of take offense and I kind of disagree with that. These are the numbers from the beginning of October. I have not had a chance to look at the October and into November citation numbers, but we've had 8,692 calls for service. Out of those 8,600 or so, or 8,700 calls for service, we've made 793 motor vehicle stops. As a result of those, 422 of those stops have resulted in either a written warning, civil motor vehicle infraction, a criminal summons, or an arrest. And some of those stops have more than just one violation associated with them. I hear people's complaints, and as I said, we have 2 patrols on the street, and as time permits, we address those. But to say that we're not writing speeding tickets or doing any motor vehicle enforcement is just totally inaccurate. I know there was complaints down on Norwood Ave. We assigned people to sit down there, and at times, they don't see any vehicles, or they just don't, people see the cruiser and they slow down. So, but, we'll look at this even more closely, and if we have to increase enforcement and add overtime, then that's what we'll do. But we're doing the best we can with the staff that we have.
If I may, Jeff.
Becky?
Thank you, Todd.
Lorraine Iavani.
I think that, excuse me. I think the issue here, Todd, is less, it's, first of all, thank you for addressing that. And we often come back to perception and reality. And I find that for myself, when I'm going to work in the morning, again, and I've said this, if I'm doing the speed limit on Pine Street, usually I have someone either right on my tail or they go around the double line on me. So that's reality. However, even if it is just a few people who are greatly exceeding the speed limit, that's a big safety concern for people who live on narrow streets with lots of pedestrians. I'm not saying I have the answer, but these are very real concerns that we need to not just give metrics to, but find out suggestions that other people may have. Thank you.
Jeff, if I may, for Chief Fitzgerald, as you were going through your numbers, I missed taking down how many, not written warnings, but specifically speeding violation tickets you wrote over that period of time.
Well, we wrote 422 citations, and that's, I don't have those numbers in front of me, but it's a combination of written warnings, civil motor vehicle infractions, which could, written warnings and civil motor vehicle infractions can include speeding. Criminal summonses can include speeding, because that could be a stop for a speeding violation, and then you find a criminal violation with, for the person's license or something else within the vehicle, or or an arrest like an operating under the influence of liquor arrest may result in a speeding. So I'd have to do a breakdown to find out how many speeding tickets there actually were.
I think it would be helpful, and I think the town would be grateful to know how many actual tickets were written specifically for speeding.
Yeah, I just
And-
want to make one point of clarification of, a written warning for speeding is not just a piece of paper. If a person or a driver gets 3 written warnings in a calendar year, so if someone gets a written warning today and it gets 3 more till next November 15th, that's an automatic 30-day suspension of the license. So just because they're not getting a money fine doesn't mean, a warning doesn't account for something. But I can get that information.
I stand by my request. A second question is, as we're collecting data about neighborhoods, can we find the times of day when there are people who are majorly exceeding the speed limit? And I don't know whether it's for Chuck or for.
No,
Chief Fitzgerald.
our speeding tubes and our data collection devices do that. We just haven't broke it down, that far yet. But yeah, we can definitely do that.
I think it'd be very useful, because there certainly is a perception that there are people who are going way over the speed limit, and it would be nice to measure and report on that, specifically including the time of day.
Yeah, we can do that.
Thank you.
Okay, Jeff, Lorena Iavani, will you be taking a public comment on this?
I will be taking public comment in just a minute. I just want to make sure that the board has said what they want to say, and then we'll go to public comment, Lorraine. And you're
Sure,
first.
Thank you. Thank you.
John, do you have anything you want to say about this?
No, I had my question earlier. That was the only one that I had at that point.
Eli?
I'm all set.
Okay. Chief Fitzgerald and I have had a long, detailed conversation about this recently, and there's a balance between resources and the realities of enforcement. But there's also the perception, and the perception is that we're not doing enough to calm the traffic through enforcement. And whether that's accurate by numbers or not, that is the perception. That's the perception that leads to people swinging around over a double yellow line to pass somebody who's going 20 miles an hour in a 20-mile-an-hour zone. It's a difficult thing to manage these perceptions. There are communities that are nearby where, and I'm not going to mention any specific communities, where the perception is if you speed at all, you're going to get a ticket. And I don't know whether they have different resources or they've allocated their resources differently. There's a lot for our department to do. And the resources is an important issue. I was impressed to learn that on every shift, each 8-hour shift a day, up to 4 hours of traffic enforcement is happening in 2 separate vehicles. So in 2 separate areas of the town. And that includes on the graveyard shift. I guess the comment that I'm trying to say is we need to be able to shift the perception, and we need to be able to figure out a way of addressing egregious violations that threaten public safety. And that changes based on how much the speed limit is. 10 over is a different category of ticket. A much more expensive ticket, both in terms of insurance points and in terms of fines. But 10 over at 35 and 10 over at 20 are two different things. And I mean, you can do it by the math. One's 50% over. The other is only about 33% over. A little bit less, about 30% over. And it's much more dangerous when people are expecting to have folks traveling at 20 miles an hour to have them traveling at 30. So some of the things that have been suggested, I think may be helpful. Having some more information from Chief Fitzgerald about the times of day that the worst offenders are offending, and whether that can be a focal point in terms of enforcement. That could be helpful. But somehow we have to shift this perception, and that that you can get away with it. If there's no other board comments, and I don't see any, I'll take public comment. Lorraine.
Okay, thank you, Jeff. Lorraine Iavani, 28 Pine Street. There's no question that occasionally you do have people speeding on Pine Street, and like Becky, I myself had one experience in 6 years where someone tailed me and then tried to, go around me. So, when the police aren't around, it's one of those things. So, but it doesn't happen 100% of the time. But I think you all hit upon a very important message here, and that is perception. So I'm going to make a couple of suggestions here because this is a tough one. We all want to, make sure that we're safe, and I know that Chief Fitzgerald, just based on this data, is doing a tremendous job here. So having something put out there in terms of either the town administrator's blog, perhaps, or even something in the Cricket, or something on one of the social media sites. I don't know if this is possible or not, but just to give the basic data. This is the first time I've heard this data, and quite frankly, I'm impressed. And, there is limited resources in our PD, so, that's an issue. But I think that Todd has outlined clearly that there's no question that he's enforcing. And the key here, like you said, Jeff, is how to turn that around so people feel that, we're doing what we need to do here in town, you folks, that is. So those are my suggestions. Basically, to start a social media or some kind of media blitz where you inform the public. Not everyone can sit on these calls. I like to sit in just to see what's going on once in a while, but quite frankly, I'm impressed. And if I'm impressed here with this, just listening, and I live on Pine, then I think other people might appreciate the data as well. So that's all I have to say. And I'm sorry, Becky, I didn't mean to intrude. I'm on the phone, so it's hard for me to actually see who's speaking at any time. So thank you. And that's what I have to say tonight. Thanks so much.
Wait, Lorraine, before you go away, Jeff, if I may.
Go ahead.
Lorraine, you said you had two suggestions, and I wrote down the one about the blog as social media, which is great. What was did I miss the second one?
No, basically either the Cricket, a blog, social media, some way of, just putting the data out there, because honestly, after listening to this and Todd, among all his other things that he is doing, this is impressive, I must say. And if it impresses me, and I live on Pine Street, so I just think that's it, Becky, just those a couple of things. I don't know, one or two things or whatever can be done. But it's basically just changing perception is getting the data out there, the information out there to the folks. So that's what I would suggest. But I do appreciate the time. You guys are busy, so thank you.
Thank you. I just wanted to be sure I got those. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Becky. Thank you.
Jeff?
Hello?
I don't want to be muted. I want to be unmuted. Jeff?
Who's this?
Oh, Sue Thorne on Sawmill Circle. I think I agree with a great deal of what the previous speaker said. And I do think the issue is much more perception than actuality. And I think, when you pick up the Gloucester Times anyway, it's issued a ticket, a warning. But Todd indicates that a lot of those warnings are coupled not just with speeding or a stop violation, but with other infractions that particular driver has evidenced in that stop. And I think if the paper can give a more detailed report of the activities of the police enforcing traffic regulations, that would go a long way to dissuading the perception that people are just getting, a verbal warning. They're getting more than that, and they need to understand that. These guys are working hard, and I think they're taking a bit of a tough rap in many ways. And I think that using social media, I think having Greg do an article in his column or a co-authored article with Todd could go a long way to explaining a lot of what I think some of us are learning just on this meeting tonight. Thank you.
Okay, I'd like to respond to what you just said, Sue, with a couple of things. One is, correct me if I'm wrong, Chief, but 70% of the speeding tickets and or warnings, speeding tickets, warnings and violations go to residents. Is that correct?
I haven't done an actual breakdown, but I believe most of the people that we're stopping are Manchester residents.
Which makes sense because they're the people who are most often driving on our roads. Perceptions are tricky. And they're tricky because Lorraine Iavani just said once in the past, I don't know how many years she said, but it was many years, 10 years, she's had somebody tailgating her on Pine Street. Twice for me in the past 2 months, I've had somebody cross a double yellow line to go around me. And that's in the decades that I've lived here. That's the first 2 experiences I've ever had of that. I think that there's a bit of, I can do what I want to do here, and there's no police around. And catching somebody crossing the double line is next to impossible for law enforcement. Because if they're there, it's unlikely that somebody's going to take the jump. But it concerns me that, we go on any kind of anecdotal data, including my own. But twice in over 2 decades of living here, now maybe I've just slowed down, so people are much more annoyed with me when I drive at 20 miles an hour or 22 miles an hour in a safety zone. Jen Colarusso. Ms. Colarusso, you have your Zoom hand up. Do you want to make a comment?
Hi, I'm sorry. I wasn't clicking. Hi. I just wanted to go on the record and
Could you please give us your residence street?
I'm on Pleasant Street.
Thank
I
you.
think a few of you probably have heard from me over the course of 6 years of living here, almost 7 years. I just wanted to go on the record and say, I don't have a perception that the police are not doing their job. In fact, I know they're doing their job because I've called them many times. I've actually had a sit-down meeting with Todd once in town, and he was very understanding. And every time I call, they've been very responsive. It's not the policing or the enforcing, it's actually curbing the speeding all the time. The cops can't be everywhere all the time. And the problem is, you call them out, they come, they sit, they do their job, they deter the traffic, they deter the speeding, and as soon as they leave, it kicks back up again. I'm looking for real tangible changes to the town, whether it's to the road or to the signage or lights or raised crosswalks. I just think that the blame game is not going to get us anywhere. And it's important to me because I have 2 small children, well, they're getting bigger, and they're on the roads, riding their bikes. They go to and from school. If there's instances, I could sit here all night and just let you know all of the things that I've experienced over the last 6 years living on Pleasant Street with the no sidewalk side. We had to put boulders out front because people were driving on our property. We have parking allowed on one side of the street, and we have children that try to bike as the pedestrians are coming. They have to go out into the street in some cases, and people, the audacity that people don't even slow down. I see people not even stopping when children are waiting to cross because we don't have a crosswalk between Pulaski and the other side of Pleasant. And for these kids to get over to the sidewalk, it's a real danger. And I'm very passionate about it because I really do feel like an accident is waiting to happen. But every time I've called the police, they come, they do their detail, they put up the radars, they do the speed signs, and they collect their data. I just do think that percentage of the cars doing this over the speed limit is much higher than we all think. And yes, I know there's tests and there's tubes and there's a lot of interference, but the average speed limit, it needs to be looked at. There's over 230 cars that drive down my street in a 7-day period that go well beyond the speed limit. And it's in the reports, it's right there, the data is there. There just needs to be some changes to the road. And that's all I have to say.
Thank you, Jen. Ashley Oakes, and I think this will be our last comment.
What if we tried to get some positivity in this where we could have citizens who really love to obey the speed limit, have some sort of a magnetic bumper sticker embracing following the Manchester speed limits, and see if somehow through positive motivation, those of us who like keeping speeds down could try to change driver behavior.
Okay, a magnetic bumper sticker.
Yeah, like the private schools, people will say like Brookwood or whatever, Glenargart on the back of their car, they stick it on.
Yep.
What if there was enough buy-in from people who believed in the speed limit that we could try to self-motivate other residents? And for the people who love going 20 down the road and frequently have people right up their butts, if there's a nice fancy bumper sticker that says, hey, we love Manchester speed limits, and if we could get a lot of people to do it, maybe we could ourselves change the mentality in town.
It's an interesting suggestion. We're willing to really think outside the box here to try and tackle this problem. Thank you. I'm going to stop here. because we have a lot of agenda items that have slipped. And they're complicated discussions as well. The problem that the Board of Selectmen has is that there's more complicated discussions to have than there is time in any one meeting. So we were supposed to start at 7:05 on the Water Resources Protection Task Force discussion. At 7:30 on the local rapid recovery plan discussion, next steps. And at 7:55, which it is now, on the American Recovery Plan Act funds and the fund use. I'm wondering if the board has an appetite for passing over any of those three items. I'm thinking in particular the Water Resources Protection Task Force discussion. I'm addressing this specifically to Mr. Bowling and Ms. Jakes because they just got up to date. There's a lot of information in our packet about this. But in terms of the press of the issues, the Rapid Recovery Plan and the ARPA funds are things that need to be addressed very soon.
Yeah, both those issues are more time sensitive. Board members certainly have the opportunity to put some give some feedback on the Water Resources Protection Task Force discussion. If they want, they can talk to Steve Gang in the intervening period, or Greg. I think delaying that one wouldn't kill us.
Okay. And you've got your hand up.
Yes.
Jeff, if
Yeah. I just recognized Ann because she put her hand up.
oh, okay.
I think I delayed this last time because I wanted to have some history. I've read the history. I understand what you're doing. I think it's a great idea. I think we may be able to pass this one very quickly. And I hate putting things off to the next meeting because the next meeting is going to be even more heavily loaded.
That's fine, Ann, except that I think that the public really needs to understand, so that we do need to have a discussion. You know, we've had an opportunity to read this, and Steve Gang has done some fantastic work on this. We had Greg and I had early discussions with him. Becky and Eli followed up with him this week. I think that part of this is information for the public about what the Water Resources Protection Plan is trying to address. And
In that case, may I suggest that we schedule an extra meeting at some point? Because every time we move one of these, we make the next meeting even more impossible to finish.
Okay.
That's probably not a bad idea.
That would, by necessity, be December 2nd. Our next scheduled board meeting is December 6th. And when we discussed this during the summer, in terms of not getting too far behind or getting agendas overloaded, we talked about having meetings on Thursdays to catch up. So we can't obviously do that this week because we already have a meeting this week, first thing in the morning, and with the Board of Health, the joint meeting, and the next Thursday is Thanksgiving, so the December 2nd would be the meeting. Is that agreeable to people?
I'd like to ask Steve if that would work for him, but I also wanted to make sure that Greg attributed all this good work to me when in fact it was actually Steve. So I just want to make sure that that was recognized that that was actually Steve's work. And if Steve can make that second, I think it's critical he be there.
Steve's been working on this since the parade, when he waylaid me on Norwood Street. And we had a conversation about this in terms of how we could go about some of his ideas about how we could go about addressing the Water Resources Protection Committee, which is a standing committee of the town that has been inactive.
Mhm.
So Steve, you on this call?
Yes, I am, and December 2nd is fine for me. I should also point out that I'm just standing on the shoulders of folks like Helen Bethel and Francie Caudle and some others who've been looking at this subject for decades before I noticed it.
The view that you have from their shoulders has been guiding.
Yeah, thank you.
So, and we thank both the people that you mentioned and others who have worked hard on this issue. There's a lot that's been done in terms of water resources protection, but I don't want to belabor the point. We'll move that to an agenda on December 2nd. And thank you, Steve, for coming for tonight.
Jeff, if I could just jump in.
Yes.
I apologize. For some reason, my video is not working. I've been trying to fix it, but it doesn't come through. So December 2nd is a finance committee meeting night. And I wonder if that Monday, which is a fifth Monday, and I don't believe there are other meetings that night, if that might be possible.
Board members?
You mean the 29th?
The 29th.
The 29th, yes.
Anybody
I'm
traveling?
afraid I'm not available that night.
Okay, all right.
But if everybody else is, go do that.
Becky, you've been involved in this, no?
Sarah Mellish has her hand up.
She does. Wednesday the 1st, is that a night that's tied up, Greg? And I will come back to Sarah in just a moment.
I'm just trying to help with the scheduling.
Okay, go ahead.
So yeah, we were planning to have a FinCom meeting on December 2nd. We were planning on having a 40B on December 1st. My sense is the 40B will probably drop down to Wednesday the 8th, and I can move a FinCom meeting off of Thursday. So I can move the FinCom meeting to the 1st, I think, and have the 40B on the 8th to free up December 2nd for you.
Well, that's wonderful. That's not going to screw you up in terms of the 40B process, is it?
I think that based on our timing, we were supposed to be talking about traffic and safety. And I think that the time for the peer reviewers, they won't be ready for December 1st. So we probably will have to go to December 8th to talk about traffic and safety. That's my sense.
Okay. So if that's okay with you, let's move back to the 2nd. Anybody on our board who has a conflict with the 2nd? And I don't want to drag this out too much. Good. You can nod, when I ask a question like that. We're good. Thank you. Okay. Then we're going to skip over that and go directly to the local rapid recovery plan discussion next steps. And Greg, can you lead us off on that, even though that you don't have a video?
Sure. So we talked at your last meeting concerning the report, the 8 recommendations, and we need to narrow that down to 2 or 3 that we might advance for further work. There's the potential for some additional funding from the state to advance a couple of those priority projects. I included in your packet a memo from Sue Brown, who's been the lead staff person on this effort, and she has been talking to the different merchants in town and the citizens who have been on the committee, in helping with this. So I would agree with her two highest priorities, and that is that creating a placemaking plan for our business core area, including parking and wayfinding and public spaces that we might be able to add as one high priority. And then the second one being creating some off-season events that draw additional people into town for the merchants in order to bolster their foot traffic. I think those are two worthwhile recommendations to pursue, and I believe they are worthy of next steps. A third priority, I think, is this public restroom. That got a lot of play this summer. We were late in getting a nicer temporary set of restrooms in place. We're a little late in terms of the season doing that, so we don't have a good test of their utility, a little bit off the beaten track. So I think a more prominent location might be worthwhile, and is something that certainly the merchants have indicated as a high priority. That may fit well with renewed discussions, whether or not you want to pursue it as to a harbor master office somewhere on the water, whether Reed or Masco. Those are probably the two most logical locations that could also serve as a as a public restroom facility. So those first two, I think in particular, are worth pursuing. And your further thoughts on that, whether or not you're ready to decide or you need some additional time, but we should have some continued discussion on what your thoughts are for next steps.
So that's placemaking, wayfinding, and restrooms.
Placemaking and wayfinding is combined in one, and so some off-season special events, say some wintertime events.
Thank you. Okay.
That would be number two, and then number three, the restrooms.
Okay. Members of the board.
Yeah, Jeff. If I may, I endorse that order, and in reviewing all of the information, as Greg has kind of indicated, wayfinding and placemaking, there's a lot of overlap between those two, and I think you cover the wayfinding when you're looking at placemaking initiatives. But so the placemaking activity and including wayfinding, I think those are the two best that we can make an impact fairly quickly out of this list, and see how things work out just within maybe the next 6 months or so. So I'm endorsing that listing or prioritization.
I'll echo John's comments.
I agree, Jeff. I do have a question regarding the shared marketing and branding.
What's your question?
There was something that the chamber was going to look into helping on, and Greg, do you remember what that was? Was that with the shared marketing and branding program?
So
where they were going to contemplate?
Right, the chamber is a willing partner in most anything we try. And they're certainly willing to offer what support they can. I think I saw Sue. Yeah, Sue Brown just raised her hand. I thought I saw her on the list. She might be able to comment a bit on that as well as other material here, Sue.
Thank you.
Sue?
Yes. Yeah, so the shared branding and marketing is something that the chamber received a grant for and is doing a what they call the pilot project, and that has an element of a shared branding and marketing program. That one is for all of Cape Ann, and they've done a number of produced a number of efforts with that. It's not specific to just Manchester, but it is Manchester as part of Cape Ann. So that's underway, and I think that they will be sharing the deliverables from that soon. I mean, some of the deliverables are ongoing podcasts, et cetera, that highlighted some Manchester businesses and other things. So there is some component of that in what the Cape Ann Chamber is doing now.
Becky, does that answer your question?
It does. Thank you.
Okay, Ann? Ann, you need to unmute
There we go.
yourself.
Yeah, I forgot which computer I was using, and I was trying to unmute with my finger when I needed to use my mouse. I would like to see the harbor master office, and associated restrooms accelerated. We've been talking about this for years and years. Having the harbor master on the harbor would be a really good thing. I'd like to see if we can get some money in this year's budget, at least for the engineering studies, if not for construction. And just get the question of, do we require our visitors to use our porta potties off of center stage? Just build some. It doesn't have to be portable. It probably should be elevated enough so that it doesn't flood, but let's put some money into that this year and put some money into the higher quality trailer toilets for next summer, this coming 2022 summer. So I'm not sure that I see as much value in wayfinding, except when it leads to letting people know where they can park. And those
Jeff,
are my
may
comments.
may I speak to that a little bit, please?
Sure.
Probably Sue would be better at this than I, but during when the local rapid recovery plan was being discussed, and the wayfinding and placemaking were explained and demonstrated, it really became very clear how much of an impact that can have, a positive impact for our businesses. So Sue might elaborate.
It didn't come through in the document, at least not to me.
That's a good point then. Sue? Jeff, may Sue speak to that?
Sure.
Yeah, so what I would say about the placemaking plan is that it really is kind of it would allow us to create a blueprint for the entire downtown that covered everything from placemaking, wayfinding, lighting. It could dovetail in with what the Downtown Improvement Committee is doing. And it really can cover a lot of things. We often get criticized for doing things piecemeal, for not having a major plan. And this would allow us as a first step to really get together as a community, decide with a very interactive community engagement to figure out what we want the downtown to look like, how we want it to function, and then get some really solid plans for moving forward. So I think it's a good first step, and I don't think it's something that we're likely to fund on our own. So I think going after funding that's specific to this plan might be a real opportunity for us. So
a problem I have with that is the word rapid. You're talking about something that's 3 years. And our downtown needs something now.
Yeah, I agree with you, Anne, which is why we can advance a couple programs. And the other one is something that would happen this spring. So like the series of events that we could do in the shoulder season that could go further, but could get together right now. But I agree, we need to do something that has an immediate impact. And the restrooms, I think, is also a high priority for the business community, but I think we have identified other funding sources for that. So I'm happy to hear your input.
It seems that we pay a lot, or we get grants for a lot of studies, all of which recommend more studies. And I'd really like to see something concrete. Not that the toilet should be concrete, but that they should be real.
Okay. So, Ann, do you have a different set of priorities?
Yes, I would like to see us agree to put money into first plans for a harbor master facility that with agreement on where it is and an engineering study into this year's budget with the intention of building something in the 23 budget. I would also like to see something in this coming year, wherever we can get it from, so that we can have the washrooms, the trailer washrooms for this coming season. I have no objection whatsoever to somebody wants to find a way of bringing people in the spring, that's great, but spending a lot of energy on designing a joint placemaking vision with Essex strikes me as being a long way out for not much benefit.
Comment, Jeff?
Go ahead, John.
Yeah, and I might ask, so I mean, I see created a placemaking plan. I think most of us have probably read this this report, which was quite extensive with regard to Manchester and Essex. Most of the elements are there, and I don't know what the time frame is for a placemaking plan, but it's not like you have to think up a whole lot of stuff because most of it's in there. It's just deciding, okay, how are we going to implement all of this, and pulling it together in a shorter document. But is there a time frame that is expected for all of that? Because I don't think it should take very long. Because I'm with Ann in a certain extent. There have been plans to make plans, and I've seen quite a few in this regard. And I think we're at a point where elements are there.
So I would say that Jeff, I would say that the time to create the plan would be 6 to 9 months or so from the start to the end of the plan. I don't think that the plan gets in the way of going after the restrooms. I absolutely agree with Ann that that's a priority. I think the point is, I think Bion has identified funding for that, which is why I wasn't going to this particular pot of money for funding for that. So I think that they could be done simultaneously.
Well, I agree. The event thing can happen this spring. That can happen within 6 months for sure. But I would think the plan initiative, it just sounds like a long time when you haven't got a clean sheet of paper. You've got a lot of stuff already. So I'd hope that would go faster.
Oops, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Ann.
My concern is the consensus building, so that we get the whole town on one vision. And I think that's an internal project. We never are going to get there. Sometime we have to just decide, this is what we're going to do. And I'm sorry there are people who not think that they have a better idea, but if we wait until everybody agrees that we've got the best idea, we're never going to get anywhere.
I'm trying to understand, Sue, what you just said about the placemaking and wayfinding taking 6 to 9 months.
So the planning process would start with getting the community together. So figuring out what is here, mapping it, using a lot of graphics, gathering a lot of information, looking at where the parking is, looking at where the spaces are, looking at what the, identifying what the streetscape is. So you need to do that work, and then you need to get together and talk about what are the values, what are the core things that make up our community or give it the character that we love, and what are the things that the business community need to create a sense of place that really wants them, that will keep people here and keep them walking and just enhance the downtown in that way. So I think what it laid out in the plan was, in the rapid recovery plan for the process for doing this, would be a pretty intensive community engagement project up front, and out of that project would come the ideas and build consensus. And it is tough to get consensus, but I think if we do it holistically, then we're not biting off and making small projects that maybe don't fit together in the end. So I think it's worth trying to build consensus, and certainly trying to get the community to weigh in on a really holistic vision for what they want the downtown, the waterfront, the business community to look like. And I don't think it needs to get in the way of the other initiatives that can go forward now.
My sense of the board is that the concern is with redoing the rapid recovery plan. That the planning process that you're talking about has elements of redoing the rapid recovery plan. We've surveyed the community, and the priority of the community is this wayfinding. I am also concerned about having this all happen so that there's a plan in place in June and nothing gets implemented until the end of the summer. And then we're back to, how do we keep people around after the summer? We know that we have attractive things for the summer itself, when we can have the beach fully open, and other things that are going on in town as well. But my concern is that when you say 6 to 9 months, is that 6 to 9 months to have wayfinding and placemaking in, not to be redundant, but in place?
No, that's to create really, like I said, a blueprint for what should be done, and then you implement as you have the funds. And it's like taking the time to do a master plan so that you're not questioned about where did this idea come from. So it's really the blueprint for improvements for downtown that could have a fairly long shelf life, but that you could do the wayfinding. So if we think the wayfinding is the most important thing, this would kind of create that template. It would identify where the wayfinding needs to be done. It would do everything except kind of create and install the actual pieces. So it's the plan, it's not the installation of the plan.
Jeff, if I may.
Go ahead, John.
So I saw a lot of those pieces in the plan, or in the rapid recovery. I guess the rapid recovery plan report. And
Yeah,
it seems to me
Okay.
you just take page 17, you take all of these, you kind of pull it together because you've got interspersed a lot of different things. I don't see why that can't be done in 3 or 4 months
Yeah, so
at
that
the
was
most.
done. Yeah, so that was done pretty quickly and was not without a lot of public input. So I think I don't want us to be caught like we were with the Complete Streets plan, where we thought we had enough input and we thought we had enough people. I think to really do our homework well, we really want that engagement up front and that buy-in up front. So that's why I'm advocating for a plan. And I think it pulls in a lot of what we're doing, a lot of what we want to do with the parking, what we want to do with the bathrooms. And I think that we bring in experts that do this, a lot, and have come up with some great ideas and get the best ideas, pull the best ideas out of the context of the place. So again, I think it's the public process. It does take time, but I think in the end it's worth it.
So maybe these should be planning efforts that are done outside of a rapid recovery plan. Because I'm concerned that 6 to 9 months from now, we're going to be 2.5 years into COVID. And these funds are intended to help communities recover from COVID. And re-energize their economies. Maybe I've just got the wrong perception of the funds and how they're supposed to be used. But if it's a year from now, we may lose 2 or 3 more businesses. And, if it's got to be 6 to 9 months, I'd like to see more like 5 to 6 months to get something that can start to be put into place. If this is a priority, it is a priority. And if it's going to happen rapidly, it needs to happen. At least I'm hearing the sense of the Board of Selectmen. It needs to happen not next September.
So I think the things that you can do, for example, the series events is something that you could put in place immediately. But even if you went with many of the strategies had a longer term implementation process, because not only are we looking to recover, but we're looking to be resilient in the long term. So this is a step that you can take towards recovery. It's not a silver bullet, and I don't think any of the items are a silver bullet. And on their own will spur the recovery. But I think it's a step in that direction, and it will take time to implement anything, including, as Anne pointed out, the harbor master's office of the restrooms. It's going to take time, but you start somewhere. So this is an opportunity to start with a blueprint instead of piecemealing things together, which I just think is important.
How long did it take to do this rapid recovery report?
I think it was intended to be 4 months. I think it was 6 or 7.
Okay, so if you're intending to do the implementation of the placemaking and wayfinding in 6 to 9 months, are we really talking about not 9 months, but we're talking about 12 to 15?
I don't know if you're looking for an answer. I'm not following your math.
Well,
exactly,
what you
but-
just said was that the intention with the rapid recovery plan was 3 to 4 months that
Yeah.
that would be put together.
Right.
And it took 50% longer than that. Are we in the same ballpark when we start to talk about wayfinding and placemaking?
Well, that was a program that the state was inventing as they were rolling it out. So I think a placemaking plan, we have a pretty good idea of how we would go about getting it. So I think we could dictate the time that we have on it. So.
Okay. Greg.
So couple of things. I think what I'm hearing is a real strong desire to have some concrete projects ready to roll before the start of next summer. And I think we could identify, 3 or 4 items like that we could do. Certainly some event planning during late winter and springtime falls into that category. Making sure we have nice restrooms that are easily accessible, ready for next summer is certainly something that we could have in place. But I do think there is value in that blueprint. Time and again, we have seen efforts to make some changes backfire because of the lack of, at least the perception of a lack of engagement with the community. So it's always a little messy, but I think it's possible. And the ARPA money, the American Recovery Act money, is multi-year. It is available to us to spend for the next 3 or 4 years. So that is not particularly rapid in terms of immediate, but I think we can do a combination of getting some things on the ground for next summer, and also putting in place that blueprint that'll guide us for the next few years in additional improvements beyond what we can do for next summer.
Okay. Ann?
There's one other thing that I'd like to see done on a very high priority, and that is finding a way to direct people to places to park and letting people know that it's possible to park behind the town hall and get to not just run it in the cricket, but make a sign of some sort that indicates that you can get to downtown from the town hall parking lot. And the current sign for the downtown parking lot is small and easy to miss. If you're driving through and you think maybe I'd like to park, you've missed it by the time you realize that you're in downtown. So maybe we could put a high priority on identifying parking places to park. And it doesn't have to be unified. When we have a plan for a whole wayfinding program, then we can replace whatever we're doing that we've done piecemeal. But let people know now.
Yeah, I mean, that can be as simple as parking flyers that are online and in stores and that sort of thing. I mean, there are things that we can do, certainly immediate, to help direct people.
The problem with having them in the stores is you have to be parked to be in the store.
No, I understand.
It could be as simple as putting a sign out on School Street when you first get off the highway. Public parking behind Town Hall.
Whatever.
But
let's not wait.
I'm shooting from the hip, and I don't want to do that. I'm gonna limit this to 5 more minutes, and then take a vote on what the priorities are. Is this Ken Reel, who's behind the Cape Ann Chamber?
I think it's Olivia.
Oh, it's Olivia. Hi, Olivia.
Hi, yeah, it's Olivia. I'm the Community Relations Director at the Chamber, and I did attend the various LRRP, SME consultations for not just Essex and Manchester, but also Gloucester. And wayfinding and placemaking is something Rockport and Gloucester are also prioritizing amongst other things. I haven't heard exactly what their top two options are, but this isn't something you wouldn't want to rush into and get it out in front of the downtown in 6 to 9 months. This is something, if it's done right, could be life-changing for the businesses, but also the town itself. It will bring more businesses to downtown because it'll make it more inviting to them, and it would increase visitors and foot traffic. And when you have the off-season event, it'll just be incredible. So I know we're always in a rush, but I think if it's done, if it's well thought out and done well, it would be incredible. And that's all.
Okay, Becky, one last comment.
I just wanted to say, if, to that end, if you refer back to starting on page 70 of the Rapid Recovery Plan report, and just go forward on 70, 71 a little bit, it really brings home the long-term purposes and potential impacts of the placemaking and wayfinding plan. And I think that while we're putting money into a long-term plan, then at the same time, let's work on these other things, the off-season events, the public restrooms. And I agree 100% with Ann. There's to find the pathway from parking to downtown is it's a bit of a problem, just because we wanted that put in place quickly, and we haven't had the opportunity to do signage. But I think it's critical to have parking and pathway signage that's really clearly marked.
Okay, I think that we're talking about timeframes a lot, and I think we're also talking about the same priorities. And what Greg has asked us to do tonight is to bring this forward for a vote for our priorities. So can I get a motion for the top 3 priorities that the board would like to see?
Yeah, Jeff, I'll make a motion for the top priorities to be the placemaking plan, which will include elements of wayfinding, and by definition it does, as being top priority, along with establishing an off-season event series, or I assume that means spring, some event-driven sort of activity starting this spring. And then the third one would be the restrooms, as Ann had indicated.
Second.
You ready to vote? Hello?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, it's nice to get a response every once in a while when I ask a question. Okay, Mr. Round,
Yes.
Mr. Bowling,
Yes.
Ms. Harrison,
No.
Ms. Jakes,
Yes.
Mr. Bowden Turner votes yes. I think that, Sue, you've heard some of the concerns, and you could call us lay people who haven't been involved in this process, but well, the issue of wayfinding being subsumed under placemaking has been raised. We're talking about the need for wayfinding related to parking happening as soon as is reasonable. And that's the priority of the Board of Selectmen. And you need to take into account what Olivia said about the priorities of the Chamber of Commerce as well. Okay. American Plan Recovery Act funds. Oh, boy.
So you had a discussion of this at your last meeting as well. And just a quick reminder, 1.5 million roughly in ARPA monies. This is separate from infrastructure dollars. There will be additional infrastructure dollars coming as well. A lot of that will be competitive, but not all of it. And there are some additional dollars that the state is also allocating towards municipalities under their ARPA money. So at your last meeting, we reviewed a number of DPW projects and also some others. So roughly $1 million in DPW projects and $500,000 in other. The Finance Committee was very supportive of the DPW projects and approved that initial list. They were not as excited about the other projects. They leaned towards using perhaps all of the money for DPW. We could easily spend it all on DPW, but I do think it is wise to set some of the dollars aside for some of these other efforts. Again, we'll have to see. The state is discussing both the House and Senate versions of the ARPA and state surplus, are talking about additional funds for public health and boards of health. Depending on how that shakes out, maybe we don't need to use ARPA money. We need to wait and see on that. But we may need some additional dollars from ARPA to help with some of the COVID-related expenses. We had economic recovery efforts listed to the tune of about 200,000 and climate resiliency efforts to the tune of about 150,000. We don't need to make final decisions on that 500,000, except I would like a green light for 15,000 for the climate resiliency project advancement for the Voices for Climate Change effort. That would be a Cape Ann-wide effort of the 4 communities. As I indicated last time, Gloucester has agreed to put 55,000 into that. And we're looking for 10 to 15,000 from each of the other 3 communities to go towards that effort. It would be helpful to approve the initial list of DPW projects. And again, that came to 642,000 for the various design works, the three design projects, and then the SCADA system, which was the largest expense at 340, and then 100,000 for putting a mixer in the water tank, and also replacing the main water meters at the water plant. So again, bottom line for this evening, it'd be very helpful if you are agreeable to approve the 642,000 for the 5 different DPW projects that are listed, and then 15,000 for the Voices project, the Voices for Climate Action project.
So Greg, you're not asking tonight for us to approve the water pipe construction cost contribution of 450,000?
No, that's not needed tonight.
Okay. What about the BOH COVID expenses?
Again, we don't need to do that this evening.
Okay.
We have time.
It's fine with me if we don't need to do it, if we have time. Any comments, questions, concerns from the board on this?
If I may, Jeff?
Go ahead, Becky.
If the board just voted to go ahead and go forward with the three items on the local rapid recovery plan, we don't need to approve that money this evening. Those are going to be grant funded.
So I think we will wait and see. So I think it's worth pursuing some other funding sources first. And if those are not successful, then we come back to you and potentially tap some additional ARPA money. So I think we set roughly half of the ARPA money aside for now, go forward with the DPW projects and the small climate resiliency project, and then come back to you at a later date about the other funds, depending on, again, there's a lot of moving pieces right now with different pieces of legislation and with things coming out.
Thank you.
And did you have your hand raised on this?
I did.
Then Ann, why don't you go ahead?
Thank you. I move to approve the DIP Phase 2 design, School Street water pipe engineering, Plum Hill water pipe engineering, water plant SCADA system, and the water tank mixer plant and plant meters for a total of $642,200 from ARPA funds.
Second.
Hold on. Greg also asked for the 15,000 for Regional Voices project. Are you leaving that out, or?
I did leave that out. I left it out because I have questions about it and I'd like to get the stuff that we all agree on off our plate right now.
Okay. Any discussion from the board? Roll call vote. Mr. Round?
Is there a second?
Yes, there was.
Okay.
Yes. Yes.
Mr. Bowling?
Yes.
Ms. Jaggs?
Yes.
Ms. Harrison?
Yes.
Mr. Bob Turner votes yes. Get a motion for the Regional Voices project for 15,000.
As long as we allow discussion, so moved.
Second.
Second.
Discussion.
Greg, what exactly is the Voices project?
So the Voices project is it's an effort to make sure that the climate resiliency projects have the support of the citizens. So it's an effort to identify what people value in terms of their special places on Cape Ann, what they see as threatened by sea level rise, what they worry about for sea level rise and storms and et cetera. And it's designed to elevate awareness and support for resiliency projects. So it's a effort teaming up with a team of volunteers who literally go out and talk to people and record those conversations about their concerns about climate. It is teaming up with some researchers at Harvard who are ethnographers by training and identifying the unique cultural values and feelings of special place that Cape Anners have, and how those feelings and desires and aspirations are threatened by climate change, and how we can then address and tailor, I should say, how we can tailor our solutions and resiliency projects to address those concerns that people have. So it's laying the foundation for strong public support 4 projects.
Greg, question is there an agency or some sort of an organization that is administering this right now, or is this just
So
an
this is
idea out there?
no. So this is a combination of the 4 communities, representatives of each of the 4 municipalities, and then also the Climate Action Coalition, which is a Cape Ann coalition in conjunction with Town Green 2025, which is again a Cape Ann wide organization. So it's a combination of the 4 municipalities, nonprofits in the area, and then teaming up with some researchers at Harvard.
Much of this was discussed in our last meeting. So, and I'm saying that because it's now 5 minutes to 9 or 10 minutes to 9, and we need to keep moving. So is the board ready to vote? Okay. Mr. Bowling?
Yes.
Ms. Jakes?
Yes.
Ms. Harrison?
Yes.
Mr. Round?
Yes.
Mr. Parker Turner votes yes.
Great, thank you.
Great, we've caught up to where we should have been at 8:15. We have 2 requested uses of town common. Greg, do you want to tee this one up?
Yes, again, materials in your packet. The Women's Club looking to do the annual friendship tree, which is an honoring of loved ones, and donations to the Women's Club for the lights on the tree, and also a concert that traditionally has been indoors, but they are looking to do it outdoors this year on the steps of Town Hall. So this is the high school, various high school music department offerings, probably the band and a cappella group, and different, high school and elementary school and middle school. So that's request number 1. That's December 5th, a Sunday afternoon. And then the second request is a new organization in the area, Chabad of Cape Ann, and they have requested to place a public menorah on the town common during Hanukkah this year, which is the 8th day starting on the 28th of November.
Okay, in terms of the first request, I was trying to obtain more information about the concert this year, and I was unable to obtain it by the time of this meeting. And I should have it within the next day or 2. So I have put onto the agenda for the joint meeting with BOH on Thursday morning that will follow with a Board of Selectmen, a short Board of Selectmen meeting to reconsider any concerns related to the concert on the green. So this first item is something that we're quite familiar with, and is there any discussion on it? Ann?
I was going to move to approve the request from the Manchester Women's Club.
Second.
Any discussion? Okay. So the request is for the friendship tree lighting on Sunday, December 5th, 2021 at 4 p.m. with an outdoor concert on the steps of the town hall.
And Coco.
And Coco.
With marshmallows.
Yeah, okay, fine. And the one concern I have is that we've spent a lot of money laying out a lawn in front of town hall. And in the past, when this has been an indoor event in the meeting house, the crowd has been rather large. And I'm wondering about whether we need to do any kind of cordoning off of the lawn area or to protect it. I don't want to have this one event destroy the expense and beauty of that front edge of town common near the steps.
Can we arrange to have a blizzard that day?
Well, we could, and then the concert would be delayed, but the concert will happen. They may have to get new cocoa. If that's not a shared concern of the board, then we can move to a vote.
I'm not particularly concerned about the grass in early December.
Nor am I.
Okay. Chuck? You still there?
I am still here. I'm going to withhold my thoughts on that. I think it's probably fine for December, but
please don't withhold your thoughts.
Yeah, I think it would be fine. I've never attended the actual gala or whatever it's called. So, but I can't imagine that for one night, hopefully there's some frost in the ground and we won't have to worry too much about it coming back.
They have a mosh pit and there's other things that go on.
I can't imagine what the women's club mosh pit looks like in December, but I'll take your word for it.
You don't want to see it.
Okay. All right. So let's move to a vote. Ms. Harrison.
Yes.
Mr. Baldwin.
Yep.
Ms. Jakes.
Yes.
Mr. Brown.
Yes.
Mr. Bob Turner votes yes. The second item is the request of Shabbat of Cape Ann to display a menorah on the town common. And you received a letter in your packet. Actually, an email exchange between Greg and Rabbi Rachik. And you also received the second page of that was the second and third page was the actual request. The menorah would be 9 feet tall and 7 feet across. Stands on a sturdy base that does not require any special monitoring, special mounting. It's electric and requires a standard electric outlet to plug in to power the bulbs. We discussed this some during our previous meeting, and I open it to the discussion of the board right now.
The court case that he cites was specifically about the joint display of symbols from various religions. As it happens, given the calendar this year, there's one day of overlap. This is not a joint display showing a winter holiday, bringing people together, and I think we should not approve it.
Okay, any other comments?
Yeah, I'm in agreement with Dan. Additionally, we typically do support events from groups outside of our communities. Displays, typically, we have supported those from groups inside our community with some clear evidence of activity within our community. And this one doesn't meet that qualification. For those two reasons, I think I would agree with Ann. No. Politely decline.
Becky, John,
Jeff, if I may.
go ahead.
I agree. We do support within the community. I agree with what Ann and Eli said, and respectfully decline.
And Jeff, for all the reasons that folks have said, and it would be quite precedent setting, I think, if we were to go in another direction. I agree with the comments and arguments that have been placed forward.
Okay. There actually are some precedents by the Board of Selectmen in regard to religious displays on the common, and those precedents are to not allow them. There was a request for a living creche about 4 or 5 years ago, maybe 6 or 7 years ago, and that was denied. A request for cross at Easter, and that was denied. So I think that this request follows in the light of a religious request, in that each evening a new light would be lit in the menorah, and celebrating each of the 8 days that the light in the temple, the lamp in the temple burned beyond when it should have. So I'm also of the opinion that we should politely decline this request. I would invite any members of the public, or it appears that Rabbi Rachik is here. If you would like to address us and make a comment. Okay, apparently not. Okay, so can I get a motion?
Motion to deny the request of Shabbat of Cape Ann for a menorah display on the town common.
Second.
Okay, so moved by Ms. Jakes and seconded by Mr. Bowling. Any further discussion? Ms. Jakes?
Yes.
Mr. Bowling?
Yes.
Mr. Round?
Yes.
Ms. Harrison?
Yes.
Mr. Bodnar Turner votes yes. Okay. Next part of our agenda is the consent agenda with the Board of Selectmen meeting minutes of October 18th. Have you had sufficient time to review those minutes?
Yes.
No.
Yes.
Well, Anne's saying no.
That's okay. I will abstain. I can abstain.
I felt like it was pretty tight. I've started to read them and I haven't finished reading them. So I'd like to put it off.
Fine, pull 'em.
I beg your pardon?
That's fine, pull them.
Okay, so we're pulling that out. We have a seasonal population estimate. We have the FAQs on town water and wastewater systems. And I circulated a couple of small comments, moving something from the appendix up into the main body. And the appointment to Affordable Housing Trust.
And the special election warrant.
Ooh, I don't see that on our agenda.
Yeah, it was amended.
It's on the amended agenda?
Right. So it was posted.
Okay. And the special election warrant. Motion for, with the exception of the BOS meetings from.
Motion to approve the consent agenda with the exception of the BOS minutes.
Second.
Okay, moved by Mr. Balling, seconded by Ms. Jakes. Roll call vote. Ms. Harrison.
Yes.
Mr. Balling.
Yes.
Mr. Round.
Yes.
Mr. Jakes.
Yes.
Mr. Bowden Turner votes yes. Town administrators report.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll be brief. You have probably heard of PFAS. They are what are called forever chemicals in the environment, and they are starting to show up in public water supplies. We have, ahead of schedule, we have done some testing on our water supplies. The threshold is 20 parts per trillion. It's an extremely small amount. Other states have set it at 70 parts. Massachusetts has set it at 20. Our testing shows that we are in the teens. I think anywhere from 12 to 18, maybe 16 parts per trillion. So we are below that threshold where action needs to be taken. But we are within the range, the 10 to 20 range, where testing will need to be done frequently. I believe that required testing begins in the fall, in September. And we will continue to monitor our levels, and we will be reporting on that regularly. And if there are, if we see the levels rising and we get over that 20 parts per trillion threshold, then we will need to take further action. There are ways to try to remove the chemicals from water supply, depending on what type that might be in ours, and just the nature and chemical composition of the water will determine how expensive that removal process is. The state does seem to be rallying and putting some dollars into remediation for communities that need it. So we will have to see. But basically, this is just an FYI that it's something that is being monitored, part of our reporting, and we'll continue to keep you updated on that. I know that Chuck is still on, so I don't know if he has anything else to add. I know that he's been involved with the Water Association in the state very heavily with this, and is very much on top of it. So he's more of an expert than I am.
No, that was pretty good summary, Greg. I just want to make sure that we're all aware that, so it's at each point of entry into the distribution system. So we have two, we have the well and we have the treatment plant up at Gravelly Pond. And so the testing that we did at the well was the numbers that Greg was referring to. And the most recent round was at the 18 threshold. We will be doing confirmatory sampling and testing on that. And that will, like Greg said, set us up for the next, probably monthly testing, at least for the first year, or probably indefinitely. And then the pond, the treatment plant itself was less than 10. We still, for this initial round, have to do confirmatory sampling, but then after, as long as it stays below 10, we probably will only be required to do quarterly. But there, before we get that baseline, we have to do some follow-up stuff. So that's all in progress. And it's just to say, if we do get over 20, like Greg said, we'll have to look into treatment options or taking the well offline for extended periods of time, and doing more engineering and study around that. So to be continued, but certainly we're keeping a very close eye on it.
So as I say, an FYI for now, and we will keep you posted as things progress. Wanted to give you a quick update, staffing update. We're pretty close to making a hire for the assistant in my office, and hope to have that wrapped up sometime this week or early next. We are looking at possible some office rearrangement. It may be appropriate to have my office, your selectmen's / town administrator's office with the executive assistant and with the special projects coordinator being in one space. One option would be then to swap offices with treasurer collector. Be a little different traffic pattern. People come in that door and go straight to the collector treasurer's office with their checks. And so that's one option. We'll be talking with staff tomorrow about if they have other ideas that we can brainstorm a little bit on. But there is a need for some reshuffling and see if we can get a little better utilization of the space that we need to accommodate the folks that we have. So again, stay tuned on that. And if you have your own ideas, I would welcome them. And then thirdly, hybrid meeting capabilities. We did receive the equipment needed to set up room 5 as a hybrid meeting space. We're still working out some of the bugs with the equipment, making sure that it'll be operating smoothly. Another round of testing tomorrow and some initial training. And assuming that is all smooth, then we will ask the chairs and clerks of different boards and committees to get trained so that we can move forward with hybrid meetings, meaning the board or committee members themselves would be in person, and those boards and committees might have if they have different applicants coming in, they could have those people in person as well, but that the general audience and residents who want to listen in, they would be doing so over Zoom and would be virtual. And so the new setup has a very large, basically a large computer screen, large TV screen that acts as the Zoom screen for everyone in the room to see, and cameras also then projecting back out to Zoom so that people who are participating remotely can see what's happening in the room, and obviously the audio going back and forth as well. So that'll be, as I say, in another week or two, that should be ready to go. And we are working with 1623 Studios, and for the larger meetings, that is boards and committees that tend to have a larger participation, yourself, selectmen, planning board, zoning board, those meetings, we hope to have 1623 staff there on site, helping with the audio video management of the room. We will also be setting up room 7 as a smaller meeting space for smaller boards and committees that don't generally have as big of audience participating. That'll be Zoom only. It will not be live projection or live broadcasting over 1623 channels, which is what room 5 will have. But room 7 will be another meeting space that can host hybrid meetings for or committees that don't have as big of an audience typically. So that is a little bit behind, more than a little bit behind schedule. We had hoped that this would be ready in September. Delays and shipping equipment, et cetera, hurt us. We had hoped to have it live this week, but I think it's best to make sure that we have all the bugs worked out. And I don't want to have our first one run into technical difficulties that caused the meeting to have to be ended prematurely. So I want to make sure that we've got a well-running system before we go live with it.
Ron, you get your hand up?
Yeah, just a quick question. Do board members have the option to go Zoom or in person?
So the intent is to have board members in person if you're going to do a hybrid. I can double check with council. Well, let me double check on that, Ron.
Thank you.
Sarah?
Yeah, I think board members have to be in person, but am I assuming, Greg, that my ZBA meeting hosted as a public hearing, I can switch it to totally Zoom? It was posted
Yes.
as.
Right, so that should be amended just to say this is 100% Zoom, not hybrid.
It didn't need to be in the public hearing notice.
Right, so you can switch it to all Zoom since
Okay.
since that was already part of the notice. It could be modified. It's just like posting a change in room if we had an overflow crowd, similar to that.
Great, thank you.
Okay, any questions of the board on Greg's report? All right. I don't have any other matters that have not been reasonably anticipated by the chair. So I will entertain a motion to adjourn and go into executive session under Mass General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 21A3, to discuss strategy with respect to contract negotiations, not to return to public meeting.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, so moved by Becky and seconded by Ann. Roll call vote. Eli?
Yes.
John?
Yes.
Ann?
Yes.
Becky?
Yes.
Mr. Bob Turner votes yes. Thank you very much. Good night, all.